Welcome to the Inside View. I'm Ralph Renzulli, your host. Thanks for watching. As some of you may or may not know, the New York State Comptroller's Office recently completed its audit of the city's finances. They released their findings last week. And frankly, it was a very poor report that didn't reflect too well on the city. Back in 2021, the state did a similar audit, and their findings indicated 12 areas of improvement that they wanted the city to implement. The city council at that time accepted that report and actually adopted a resolution to implement a corrective action plan for those 12 items. Let's fast forward back to 2024. This report indicates that not one of those 12 recommendations were actually completed. I find that very disheartening and very disappointed. So, this audit that the state does is part of an early warning system that the Comptroller's Office developed to help communities like ours assess their financial health and do something about it. Unfortunately, we're not in a very good position. As a matter of fact, if you look at, and this report is actually on the city website, and there's a lot of information on there for people to look at. I encourage you to do that. Back in 2022, the city got scored by the state, along with a lot of other companies who submitted financial reports at the end of the year to the state. Unfortunately, our city scored poorly. There were only 2 other communities in the entire state that scored worse than us. Think about that. Only 2 communities were worse off than we were across the entire state. Again, very disappointing. So, I believe in transparency, and I thought it was very appropriate to have the person with me today who is going to be responsible for fixing this mess. And that's our Mayor Deborah Kaufman. Mayor?
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in. I hope that sets the stage for us a little bit here.
Yeah, no, that's great. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and some of it known before I came into office, and other parts not quite. So it's a very heavy lift, but we're going to get it done. So looking forward to sharing thoughts.
Okay, so before we get into some of the real issues here, I have a question about the Comptroller's Office, and I'm hoping you can answer it. In regard to these recommendations, how much authority does the state have? Let's say you didn't do anything for the next couple of years. What could they do? What would they do? What are the implications of failing to meet the requirements?
Well, the first implication is that your city will go downhill, and you may end up to the point where you have to dissolve your city or your municipality, whatever it is. So that's the first threat. But as far as the Comptroller's Office, they put out the information, and it's up to the taxpayers and the voters to move the council, move the mayor, whoever's in the administration, to do something. And if they don't, then they move these people through their votes. So do they have any legal authority? No. I don't know of anyone who is a mayor or a supervisor or, a town leader who would want to look at their city being reported on all the time as in the hole. At some point in time, with certain things like going over the CTL limit, the constitutional tax limit, if you go over it, which we ran really close this year, we had to dial back some of what we wanted to do with taxes because we would hit the ceiling of that CTL. It's a scoring mechanism to protect taxpayers so that no city is taking unfair advantage of them with regard to taxes. And when we first looked at what we would need to run the city, we felt we needed 6%, which was high. Going over the tax limit, our tax base is 2%. So going to 6% is something very serious. And we knew at the beginning of the year that we were probably going to have to do something a little bit more aggressive than what had been done in the past. We moved it down to 3.5, the reason being we exceeded the tax limit. And the tax limit, the constitutional tax limit, when you exceed it, then you risk all of your funding from the state. So it's either some funding or all funding we can't survive without the funding from the state. And most municipalities are the same way.
Okay.
So that would be the penalty for not adhering to some of the suggestions that they're making.
So, September 2023, the city took out a revenue anticipation note of $875,000. A couple of months later, in November, they took out another tax anticipation note of 1.7 or 1.9 million. According to this report that the state issued, those notes come due this month.
They have, and actually we, yes, and so.
How are you dealing with that?
Very carefully. A couple of months ago, I was told by the treasurer that July was going to be awful. That by the time we got to July, we would be out of funds and no way to get funding because of just the nature of it. Funding your deficit balance is not something that is easily done. So we started looking at what to do about it. And the notes that were coming due, we had, some things that came through earlier in the year in March. And then we had also this coming at us, about $3 million that we needed to come up with toward the end of June and 1st of July. So what I did was I contacted everyone at the state and said, I need help. This is an emergency situation. I got a lot of good support from all the Comptroller's office, who referred me to the budget, the Department of Budget, the Department of State. I had Senator Walczyk's office working with me. Everybody was trying whatever they could to help me out. And one of the things that they did, which helped us for July, was they allowed us to receive our AIM payment early. And that was $866,000.
What's AIM stand for?
AIM is it's a fund that is set up for, it is, what's the acronym is, it's aid and incentives for municipalities. And cities have a larger portion of it than villages and towns. And there's a scale, a graduated scale as to how you would score, and that's, the amount that you would end up getting. But we get it every single year, but we get it in December. So being able to get it early saved the day for us. So we were able to meet our, financial requirements with those two bonds that came due. And so we're good.
So they're totally paid off.
They're totally paid off.
Okay. That's good news. That's really good news.
Well, it is, because in talking with the state, one of the when you get right down to rock bottom, you have to make some really hard decisions. And one of the things that they said to me, especially the Financial Restructuring Board, there is a gentleman there who has been just invaluable. I can't say enough about him. He really helped me out with very practical information. And what he said was to make sure your bonds, make sure the rands, the TANs, all of them are taken care of, make sure your payroll's taken care of, and then everything else comes after, that it's essential needs right after that. And you have to be very, very cautious as to every expenditure. So we pretty much shut everything down that our plans, and are just taking care of what we need to. So having the ability to finance going forward is critical for us, because at the end of the year, we have the TAN, the temporary money coming at us. We have to bond for the fact that our year end is, in December, and then we don't get our, any cash from tax, property tax, or anything else until
we'll talk about
May.
that a little bit later.
So that's essential for the way we're set up right now.
Okay, good. So what I'm trying to do here is hit some of the big ticket items that were in this report. And the next one is the fact that the city failed to make some payments to the Employee Retirement Fund and the Police and Firemen Retirement Fund.
Yes.
The total of a little over $1.3 million. Now, I understand from the report, and I hope you can elaborate on this, we're going to be making payments of $30,000 a month for the next 4 years, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Have you budgeted for this yet, or?
Yes, we've been keeping up with it. That came about in February 1st.
Okay.
And I was notified that I needed $3 million at that time to take care of the pension payments. It's a little bit higher than what you were discussing. I think it's closer to $3 million. But anyway, I'll double check that. But it was. I think we financed $2.8 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, my number came out of the report.
Okay, well then your number is probably right.
Well, I don't know.
I don't have him in front of me.
Either way.
So, but anyway, we actually did finance that. I talked to the state department that runs that, the New York SLR, and we negotiated the debt consolidation, essentially. Okay. And so not only are we paying the $30,000 a month, we have to also budget another $700,000 a month, or $170,000, take that back, a month in order to get to pay for the 2025 that'll be coming due February 1st.
Okay.
So it's a lot, yeah. And fortunately, it's one of those things that you don't have much of a choice, right? You wake up in the morning, you go in, and you realize, okay, I've got all of this debt that has to be paid immediately, and there's no choice. And we want to keep our employees happy. It's one of those things, to me, when I look at a pension fund, it's no different than paying payroll. It is a mandated. You have to pay that. You can't go without paying that. So for a couple of years, it didn't get paid, and it just kind of combined. And unfortunately, just February 1st, it was kind of a surprise because I had nowhere to pull that kind of money together.
Well, I'm sure you could do a lot with $30,000 a month.
Oh, yeah.
That you now have to make up for. One of the other things that was cited in the report was that at the end of 23, the city hired a CPA firm to come in and put together the annual financial report for the state.
Right.
And they concluded that they had to make a whole bunch of prior period adjustments to correct the fund balance.
True.
And that adjustment was over $2 million, which is one of the major factors that led to this $2.25 million deficit that we have. Unfortunately, for prior, and I'm not an accountant, but the way I understand this is when an accountant makes an adjustment like that for a prior period, the prior period doesn't suffer the loss. The balance sheet that gets hit is the current balance sheet.
That's correct.
So our 2023 balance sheet took that hit, which was one of the big factors, along with all this other money that we owe, that led to this big deficit. So my question is, how far back were those adjustments that had to be, those accounting errors? It was just the way they were, what they called them. How far back did they go? And do you have any examples of what they might have been?
I don't have specifics in front of me right now. It goes back to certainly 20, 21, 22. 22 was one of the years that they really looked at and had to pull quite a bit out of that. So we're just, looking through the detail now of what had to be adjusted. The good news is that we have a solid number that we can count on. So we know exactly where we are, which we didn't. It was a little fuzzy before that, and there was another accounting firm that came in and had a real hard time trying to balance it because the numbers there were double entries. There were revenue that the numbers were taken in 2 years. There were a lot of different things that go into that adjustment, and so there wasn't anything that I would say it was nefarious. It was just that there were so many people in accounting or the treasurer's office that had their hand in the books and trying to figure it out after having stability for so many years. I think Dave Potosik was there for 30 years. So it was a big adjustment. But there were really 5 different people who tried to make sense of it all. So I was delighted to get a really solid number going forward because when I started the year, when we were doing our budget, I was budgeting on the assumption we had, I believe it was $190,000 in the bank to start the year off. right? That was
That's
in
correct.
the general fund.
That's correct.
And so to learn that when you count the general fund at 2.25 million, and then you've got the sewer and the sewer, water, and then the Gulf, you've got 2.8 million in the hole. So in talking to my helpers at the state, our goal this year is to get to zero and then continue to dig ourselves out. So never thought I'd be under the ground so far, but it is the reality.
Well, I know that when you ran for office, you knew there was some issues, but I'm pretty sure that you didn't realize that it was quite this bad, that you would have this hanging over you. Because, if you go back to February, this February, when I first interviewed you, I asked you what your priorities were for this year. Mm-hmm. One of the things you said was, I'm going to create financial stability. I want to create financial stability for the city.
Yes.
But you got handed all this instability that you're now dealing with. So it's...
It was shocking. Yeah, it kind of took my breath away when I saw the auditor's or the accountant's report. But I'd rather get it fixed. I'd rather be on the inside fixing it than looking at reports from the outside and thinking, why isn't somebody doing something about this? We're not going to survive this if we don't get it straight. So yes, it's significantly worse. When I came into office, I had no idea. I had no time. I was budgeting, assuming that things were bad, and cutting everything in the world that I could cut, and looking at revenue in every bucket that I could find revenue, and consolidating debt, and that wasn't enough. And then a couple of months in, I figured I'd have the first year, really some time to kind of work through some of the issues and get things straightened up. But no, 2 months, and then in 4 months, I get the accountant's report, and I'm like, oh my, this was significant. The good news is I'm on it. The good news is that I like fixing things like this. So wired kind of strange, I think. So it's a challenge, but I was amazed with the support that I got from everybody at the state when I made the phone call.
Well, it's one way to learn how our finance system works. It's not a comfortable way, but you certainly learn a lot by digging in.
Yeah, certainly learned a lot since January.
I just want to point out while I'm thinking about it that the goal, at least my goal anyway, and I'm sure this is your goal too, it's not to point fingers, but I believe that you are a problem solver, and I think we need to understand how this happens so you can actually move forward.
Right.
I think that's what your mission is, right?
It is. Yeah. I think for me, looking at what happened, how did we get here? A lot of it was just neglect, not knowing what to do to generate revenue, and at the same time, our population is declining, and so your property tax assessment is going to be lower, and just on property taxes alone, it can't support our city any longer. So you have to look at what else can we do, and sales tax is wonderful. We benefit from Herkimer County, a portion of that sales tax, but looking around the city, we don't have a huge amount of retail and malls and things like that to increase sales tax. It is a very small percentage. So you have to go out and look at different things and what do we have in services and different things that we do that could generate revenue. And so shared services is one of those things that I've been really hot about for a long time, and when I was running even. So that I think the people who were in office didn't really understand how to grow revenue. And when you are working part-time and a couple of hours a week here and there as a mayor, and with no one else, there was no city manager, there wasn't anybody in place to take care of all of this, there's no way they probably even knew what was going on until it was too late. And then when it's too late, then it's like, well, let me kick the can down the road as best I can so that I don't have to deal with it on my watch.
There are several members of the current council that were present when all this was, from 2021 when that report came out. Have you spoken to any of them to ask them what they did or what they tried to do or what they couldn't do? Was there any communication between you about all of that?
Oh, yeah, we speak frequently. One of the things that was different, I think, they were not brought into the loop to understand. A lot of what we do in accounting for a city is complex. And unless you are a numbers cruncher, your eyes would glaze over when you start seeing reports. And there was the feeling that, whatever they were sending up to me, they must have looked it over and everything was fine. There wasn't that knowledge of exactly how the numbers came about. What does this go to? Why do we need this ban? And what is, if you had, for instance, in business, we have cost accounting, right? And so if you've got a big project working, like we do, we have a lot of capital projects, you would want to know at what percent are we, with what we budgeted or whatever, in the city it's the grant or whatever, how far along are we? And do we have any overrides? And when are we going to run out of money on this? And at what time do we need to get an infusion of cash coming in? None of that is available. Basically what was getting done in accounting was the bare bones basic. They didn't have the time to work into any reports, or I think the skill. With Sarah coming on board, she is working into some of those areas and doing a great job. But it's a challenge, just keeping up with the day-to-day. So we're not staffed in a way where you would typically have the accessibility of reporting, which was one of the things that made me crazy when I first came in. I wanted cash flow projections. Well, I couldn't get them. So how can I not have them? How do you manage without those? And so we're getting closer to that. Sarah and I have been working closely and pulling that together.
That was one of the indicators in the report, was that the council lacked information.
Yeah. I really think they just didn't know. And if it was explained deeper, you can't have 7-minute council meetings, and you need to take the time to educate them so that they know, so that when they're making a decision about something, they know what they're deciding about. And for that reason, even before council meetings, I call each one of them, talk through, this is what we have going on. You have any questions, making sure they really understand. There are some things we can do from a financial perspective to give them better reports that I think will give them increased insight so that they can make better decisions going forward. But I think they were honestly left out of the loop for the most part.
One of the other things that came out of the report was the fact that I guess the city has 10 or 12 bank accounts, and they're just not being reconciled. And I just have a hard time understanding how you can run a business or a city without knowing where you stand and how much cash you have, and that these things aren't reconciled. I mean, to me, that's, and I know Sarah's young and inexperienced, and we had 4 treasurers and all of that. I get it. But one would think that the city council would have been pounding their fist on the table saying, what is going on? Was that question asked, or were they AWOL?
The council never asked that. I did from the first day I was there. And so when you graduate from college with a finance major, you don't necessarily learn how to balance a checkbook. And if you're in the younger generation, they don't balance their checkbooks. It's just a thing they don't do. So it's not a real common thing that she would know. Certainly she's smart enough to figure it out, and she's working on it. But the backlog was insane. And then the other part of it is we never had an actual number that we could work with, so that we knew that for sure that's exactly what we have in the bank accounts. So now since January, we have good numbers to work with, and so we'll be catching up with all of that. But you're right, and it caused a problem. And one of the things in the report was a couple of $100,000 that we should have caught. If we were doing bank reconciliations, we would have caught that. It went into a different account, not to the city account, and we didn't know about it until the auditors came in. So there's a reason for reconciling bank accounts. But yes, it's very commonplace. If you run a business, you can't even imagine that you wouldn't reconcile the bank accounts.
I can't. I'd pull my hair out if I didn't have the right information. Let's take a break here, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Visit My Little Falls and stay connected with the latest news, information, and events in the city and the area. Our mission is to generate interest in the community and connect residents in a more meaningful way by facilitating deeper conversations about how these stories will shape the future of the Mohawk Valley. Join thousands of weekly visitors who stay up to date with feature stories, interviews, videos, our event calendar, and print publication, the Mohawk Valley Express. It's about timely local news for the community, keeping citizens informed about important issues, telling about the people who live and work here, and giving locally owned businesses the opportunity to reach a very targeted audience of locals and tourists alike. It's a whole new form of media-rich content developed specifically for today's mobile lifestyle and listeners. You can download our iOS app in the iTunes Store, listen to our country music streaming radio station, or sign up for a weekly newsletter. Stop by today at mylittlefalls.com. You'll be glad you did.
And we're back with Mayor Kaufman. One of the other things that the report spoke to was the lack of budget discipline. In fact, they cited that there were 93 accounts that were overspent by $840,000. What are you doing to fix that problem?
Well, part of it's an education problem. Just because you have it budgeted and it's in your line item doesn't mean the cash is there. Okay, so that's one problem, because once you put it in the budget, it's like, I've got to spend that money. Well, not necessarily. You have to continue to take that budget and revise it throughout the year to make sure that, you're adapting to current circumstances. And that there is money when you decide to spend it to back it up. And so a lot of work to be done on that. That's kind of a culture adjustment. The other thing is that the budgets were done in such a way that, how do I say this? They were put together to check a box that was mandatory. But when you look at some of the line items and you review some of the ones in the past, like I have, so how is that even possible that you would have that kind of revenue coming in? Because I'm not seeing where that would come from. Well, we kind of looked at it this way, looked at it that way. We thought we could, and they weren't conservative numbers to work with. They were, some of them I think were, we picked up last year and we'll throw another 10% at it, and that'll be, what we'll go with this year. They weren't really razor sharp like they should have been. And so it starts with the beginning of the budget. But they also, in the last year, they were working with numbers that didn't exist, because after the auditors, they were looking at 2 or 3 years back and making adjustments. So there was a lot done there. The budgets are challenging. There's no question about it. But you have to go through the fine detail. And I think this year when we did the budget, we went through an extraordinary amount of detail, and we took a very conservative look at what we could do and chiseled out anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. And that's before I knew what kind of trouble we were really in. A lot of times I think also you had people who had authority to purchase things and would order them without any kind of purchase order approval or any kind of, checking to see, do we have the funds to be able to cover this? And all of a sudden the bills show up and you pay them and, do the best you can, right? So there wasn't any, now anything over $500 has to be approved by myself and the treasurer.
That's a good form of discipline.
Yeah.
In my career, that's what we had at Burroughs. Mm-hmm. There were some people who could spend maybe as little as $100 without approval. Others, $250, $500. We had all these different levels. Department heads were much higher than that.
We did too before,
it's very important.
It is.
To have that discipline.
And so now no one can get too crazy, right? And they've been, the staff has been really amazing as far as being supportive, understanding where we are right now, and respectful of the things that policies have been putting in place, knowing that we're going to work through this. So the internal staff at the city, they're They're incredibly supportive and good people.
Good. And there may have been good reasons for spending all of that money, but it's the communication and well, how does this affect the budget? And what I'm doing, is that right or is that wrong? It's the checks and balances that we're lacking that concerns me.
And, the other thing is we have such need with regard to capital expenditures too in the city. It's an old city, old pipes, roads, you name it, right? There's always a project. And it's a choice between, the worst of the worst. Which one do you pick? So the money was always spent, I think, on exactly what was needed. But there wasn't any control over, okay, this is fine for this year. We're not going to touch this until next year, the following budget. Or we'll do part of it to get by until we can get into another budget. There wasn't that type of control or a harsh look at how we're running things. And that's just due to the fact that the city, with a mayor that has been primarily ceremonial, and then if you don't have a city manager to manage the city, and your mayor's only coming in here and there a couple of times a week, you've got a vacancy that needs leadership, right, to make sure that these things get done. So people basically did whatever they thought was the best thing. I mean, the staff did what they could to keep the ball moving forward, but there wasn't that multiple year oversight. What are we doing, and what are we going to need 2 years from now? Equipment wise, everything was you wake up every day and it's a new day, and we need this or we need that. There wasn't that projection that needed to be in place with regard to budgeting.
You mentioned earlier about the difference in the timing of the budget adoption and the end of our fiscal year. Have you given any more thought to solving that problem that would eliminate the need for the tax anticipation notes, which costs us a lot of money to do?
Right. Yeah, no, that was a big thing for me. Even in campaigning, it just seemed ridiculous to me that we're doing that, and for how long, and for years and years, and how Audit was compared to some of the other cities. It's not unique, but it's not the norm either. That is a very simple thing to do. We've been looking at it. The city attorney has been working with me on that, and it looks like we can do it through a resolution rather than having to go out for a public vote, because we're not changing the charter. We're just changing a date of when the back end office books will be calculated and work through. It won't change how people pay their taxes. They'll pay them exactly the same way they've always paid them. But it will change how we do our books on the other side. So we're looking at it now, the transitioning and what it's going to take to transition. I wanted to do it this year, but I'm going to have to push it to next year. We've got too much going on, just kind of surviving this deluge of financial stress that we're working through. But I believe we can do it with a resolution. Hopefully that will be confirmed shortly, but that's the direction we're going. And it would change the way we do our books. Instead of right now we have that, we don't have the money in, and we're making a judgment as to how we're going to spend it. And not knowing exactly how much money is coming in. So in December, we close our books out and we start a new year. And this is also one of the areas where the budget kind of goes crazy, because we haven't done our budget yet. Our budget goes in April 1st. So for 4 months, it's like free for all. Okay, we don't have a budget, so let's grab this while we can. It's that kind of mindset too.
Doesn't the charter speak to that that first quarter about appropriating funds, that it doesn't have the ability to appropriate funds during that first quarter until they adopt a budget? Isn't there some language in there about that? There is,
but it is the everyday kind of things, the supplies, the small things that don't necessarily go before the Common Council for an appropriations vote. So any big thing, it's certainly one of those things that if you don't have the money, you shouldn't be going forward, right? So this will change it. This will mean that either in May or June, we will end our calendar year, or our fiscal year rather, And we will have the money in at the same time, so we'll know what we're doing. And the budget we'll start it in January and just say, this is what our budget's going to be for the year. And so the more we do that and we get a couple of years under our belt, it'll smooth out. But looking at it from the perspective right now, what do we need in funds to transition? Do we need, another TAN just to transition in? And I think we're probably going to have to do that. But I'm going to see if we can get that through the council, either at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. It's that important. We just need to get there.
Sounds like it's worth trying.
Yeah.
Good. Let's turn our attention to the golf course. I love the golf course. I don't play there as much as I used to, but I grew up on that golf course. It's where I learned how to play. I think it's a wonderful amenity for the city to have.
It is.
And I was saddened to learn that about the deficit that it currently has, which is $29,000 and change. But also looking at that, I noticed that last year they would have made money if they hadn't had all those previous deficits. The revenue was higher than their expenses.
Right.
So what's your take on the golf course, and how can you go about reducing or eliminating this deficit so they can be self-sufficient?
Yeah, it's one of those things that they're doing a good job. They really are. I love the golf course too, but I like golf. But I think that it is a beautiful asset for the city. We just don't speak about it enough, get the word out enough. But Nick is doing a really good job. This year he's been really busy. The last couple of years, a couple of years ago, they broke even. This last year, they had an increase of, I think, around 1,200. So they're doing great. And when you look at the operational end of it, there is improvement. And so they're not where they need to be to chip away at that deficit from years back. But they will be. It'll happen over time. And there may be something that we can do from the city side to come up with a program that would help reduce that a little bit.
The city had to actually lend the golf course money.
Yes, for a long time, actually.
Was that
we
paid
subsidized.
Back? Was that paid back?
No, not all of it. That's what you're seeing in that number.
That's the deficit.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So there may be something. I haven't really delved into it. I'm pleased. I go to all their meetings. I'm pleased with what they're doing and how frugal they are and how much they get done. And the place is beautiful. They've really done a good job with them.
Yeah, and I think Nick's doing a great job, too. I work with him a little bit on our Golf for Life program. In fact, we're having our fundraising tournament on Saturday. He always does a great job, and I think his heart's really in it.
He's got the right personality. People like him. They want to be there, and that makes all the difference in the world. And he's really increased membership. So I think that the years where it was kind of, sagging a little bit, I think they're behind us, and going forward, I think we'll continue to increase. The more membership we get, and the more people we talk to about the course. They love playing a course, So it is one of those assets.
I remember when it was built, there were a lot of local men who walked those fields up there picking up rocks, my father being one of them. And
Really?
And one of my best friends, who's now deceased, his father, Henry Pelzer, helped design that course.
Yeah.
So the history is amazing, and how many communities can brag that they have a golf course? Not very many.
Yeah. Well, this beautiful. Usually a city course is not very, very nice, right? This is gorgeous. Mm-hmm. This is like a private course, the way that they maintain it. So it is unique. And the grounds is just beautiful being out there.
So when you look at all of the things that we just talked about, the audit report, our financial stress, what are the short-term implications and what are the long-term implications for our residents for all of this?
Right now, I mean, the short-term things that people have already experienced where I've had to cut certain discretionary fund things with regard to donations that the city was making, to various nonprofits. I had to cut that. We started looking at the revenue that we could generate from the Veterans Park, and we were, charging for one field, but none of the other fields. So those are uncomfortable things. People don't like those, and I get it. But my job is for us to survive and to, move through this as effortlessly as we can without causing a burden to the taxpayers and the residents of the community. So, I'm looking at holding strong with essential services, of course, and so your garbage will always be picked up, and the police will be there if you need them, the ambulance will be there if you need them, fire same way. But all of the extras that we did before that were nice but not necessary have gone by the wayside. So it's a very, very strict budget. We are not overstaffed. In fact, we're understaffed. And so that really kind of has helped us a little bit get through some of this. But, I think that as we go forward, we've had some nice things that have happened, like with Herkimer County legislators. Kurt Ackerman, Pete Campione, they've been our champions, and they have, with Kurt, he got into his fund, his discretionary funds that he had to work with, and donated a variety of things, gave us what we needed for a lift to change the light bulbs at Veterans Park. We got as many as we could. The lift rental is $2,000 a day, and so he took care of that. And at Moreland Park, he gave us some money to be able to fix up the cook house up there. He's paying for all of the youth baseball fees for 2 years. So all of the people that came out and having, concerns about being able to afford the fees are being taken care of thanks to Kurt, and a lot of them, and Pete, I know, always throws into to different programs like that, and also even the swimming pool. We had 100 people show up first day of opening the swimming pool, and the showers are new. They fixed the showers up. So little things like that go a long way, and there are numerous other things that the money went for. We also had 21 kids coming in through the youth program, the interns to the city, and we put them to work right away. And so, and there's no charge to the city for that. So when I say we have tremendous support from the county, the state, people are really working with us, trying to make life for everybody here while we're going through this downturn comfortable. And so we haven't forgotten about fun, too. And
Good.
That's fun is hard to come by when you're going through this. But there are some people who are so thoughtful. I mean, we even had one group who bought an air conditioner for the police department. They saw the need. The air conditioner went out, and it was over $1,000 to replace it. And they were sitting in the heat, and we were looking at how quickly can we find some money to be able to take care of them. And some good citizens stepped up and contributed and went out and bought the air conditioner and delivered it to them. So people in the city are just, really, really good people, and they look for ways to help when they can.
That's good. That's an advantage for us. What are the implications of all of this on our ability to borrow money?
So far, so good, because we have been keeping up with all our notes that are coming through. We've been paying them on time. So our yield, you're always worried about, what percentage, what's the cost of the money that you're getting. And so I saw it go up slightly, but not in an egregious way. So I'm appreciative of that. But yeah, you're always looking at that. So I'm very guarded with any we're not going after any grants this year. I shut down all grants, because with the grants, you're also looking at funding. That was, with all of the state grants, a lot of people don't realize that you have to come up with the money first, and then you get reimbursed. And then sometimes reimbursement can take a while. So by limiting the amount that we go after to finance, will help to preserve the yield that we need in order to get through the end of the year, where we'll be going after another TAN for the beginning of 2025.
Does any of this affect any of the DRI projects that the city's involved in?
One of them, we're postponing not the Main Street facade program. That is going forward, and they call it Main Street improvement. Mm-hmm. So the $600,000 that goes to the businesses to improve their facades, or equipment or whatever they have. So that's going very well. We have 26 applications and right around $1 million in need. So the 600,000 won't go too far, but we're working with the first 7 right now that were the top ones that were picked, and then the next tier is the next batch, and then we have 3 tiers is basically what we're doing. And they can handle really, 7 is a good number for them to handle because they're going out and on site visits and things like that. So it's going very well. So that's well underway. And then the Sealy Promenade, we're at the point of permitting for that project. And that goes because it's right along the canal, it needs federal permits that can take up to a year. So it's permitting and design. We're still in the design area. It is going to coincide with the Canal Corporation's Lock 17 bridge. We call it the Sky Bridge. They call it the Connector Bridge, but we like the Sky Bridge better. But their work will be taking place next year in 2025. Probably, I don't know if they'll get it all done in 25. That'd be nice, but we'll see how far it goes. But once they get the heavy equipment in and out, then we'll start working on the Sealy Promenade. And then the main street, the overhang, and that particular project, streetscaping and the canopy, that we're going to push till 25 just to give us a little breathing room.
Good. Well, I realize that there's a lot of division in the city right now. There's a lot going on, a lot of upset people, a lot of different issues. But I hope, in regards to our financial condition anyway, that people can close ranks and rally the troops to all get on the same page and help you to solve this problem because it's so important.
It is.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. When I moved back here, I looked at the city and the decline, and I decided that you're either part of the solution or you pack your bags and go elsewhere. Because I don't want to live in a community that doesn't pull together and it isn't vibrant and has the things that we need and that we enjoy in life, right? It's a quality of life. If I wanted to stay in the big city with big city problems, I would have stayed in Austin.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah. But I came back to Little Falls because Little Falls has that quality of life, small town living, people know each other, safe, where you can walk the dog, you can let the kids play in the parks and not have a concern. I think it's worth preserving. In fact, I think it's worth fighting for. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't need it on my resume. The money is not good, I can tell you that. And the level of grievances over things that people want to air, it goes with the territory. It's unique. I haven't experienced it all before in my entire career, so it is a little bit, it takes a little bit to adjust to it. But I respect their opinion and the fact that they need to share what they need to share. And and I talk to people all day long. They come into the office, they, stop by, they call me, and I answer all phone calls. And I usually, if somebody stops by, I try to make time for them. So the very open door policy, but I think people are frustrated right now. And nobody likes to go through rough times with, the city. But so far, I think that it hasn't impacted citizens as much as it could. Working on some of the things that I've been working on, jumping to very, very quickly when identifying where we were and how much of a risk we were in. If I did not do that, if I had been putting a couple of hours in a week and calling it a day, we would be in a world of hurt. And I had no idea how bad it would get. And when I realized how bad it was very sobering. So it wasn't just a matter of, I want to make the city better. No, I want to survive. I want the city to be around. And it matters. It matters to every single person in this community. If you like where you're living and you enjoy your friends and the lifestyle that we have here, it's precious. It is not the same everywhere in the country. We're very privileged to have this, and when we need help, it's just bear with me. We'll get through this, I promise you. But, it's going to take, I'm going to try to keep it as easy for the citizens as possible. So things like, Little League fees of $25 a month, I get, okay, that was probably the first occurrence of people, not happy. How dare you charge for fees for anything out there? Well, we have to. The little fees are not a huge drop in the bucket, but it shows good faith to the state that we are doing everything humanly possible to do our part in pulling our city up. They're more willing to look at us for grants and for assistance when we're doing our share. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to drop the ball in that regard. So I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to be, anything big coming down the pipe. But with citizens, from my perspective, if I could say anything to them, just be patient. We're going to get there. And the other side looks really good. We've got 1 year that we're going to have a tough time, and that's between now and next June. Once we get to that, the plan is that we'll look at deficit financing with the state, and unless some of the things that I've been doing with regard to shared service revenue start dropping in quicker than I expect, that's what we will do. And what it will be is a consolidation of all the debt. So we will get back to zero. So we'll have a mortgage payment of sorts from now until I don't know how long to pay down everything that we have out. But it will allow us to go forward. It's a reset. And so with every, black cloud, you've got some silver lining, and I think this is it. It gives us a chance to get rid of all the old baggage and to go forward and start building up our company, our city again.
Well, I'm happy to see that you still have some passion for this, despite all the turmoil for the last 6 months. It has to be difficult. But if I might switch gears a little bit, let me ask you a question. And if you can't answer this one, that's perfectly fine. I live in the second ward. We now only have one alder person.
Yes.
Have you appointed anyone?
I have one that I have talked to, and I'm waiting for a response back. But yes, We've got it under control.
So no announcement?
No announcement today.
Okay.
Coming soon, though.
Okay, good. And another subject. Do you have an official position on the Reed Street project?
That's difficult because we have, the project is in-house, and so I'm not going to weigh in one way or another. I will tell you in general terms, I am looking at every project. Low-income housing is something that just about every community needs, right? We have the Rockton Plaza that is going up, and we have the Valley View Courts. They're going to be remodeling over the next couple of years, adding to their facilities, which is great, and it's a remodel that's really been needed for a number of years. We have a very limited amount of land in Little Falls, and you look at it and you think, well, where would we put an apartment building? Where would we put this? Where would we put that? And you have to look at it. We don't have much land at all. And we don't have big vacant lots. We have Overlook and we have Reed Street property. And those are pretty much the only properties that you could put a big facility like that. Our neighborhoods are very condensed. I'm really focused on coming up with programs for our zombie houses so that we turn them back into livable homes. For people, and you've got some interesting ideas about that. I'd like to get more tradespeople back into the community, and I think that there's some good programs I've been tossing around, looking at with urban renewal. They used to do this sort of thing, so I think that that will be something that we can announce coming soon. Housing is important, but housing has to be balanced. We don't want all housing to be a certain category. We have a huge need for market rate. And every day, just about every day, I get a phone call or I see somebody out who is wanting to move back to Little Falls, loves Little Falls, but wants to buy a house somewhere in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. Want to, rent a place. but want a nice market rate house or apartment that, with maybe a garage attached to it, we can't place them. We have no place to put them. So if they want, we can make a deal on one of the houses, but you're going to have to spend time and money to fix them up. And these days, if they're baby boomers who are retiring and coming back to Little Falls, they're wanting houses that they can move in without a lot of heavy lifting. They don't want to remodel the whole thing. And we just don't have that. Our housing stock is really, really low. And we have had a lot of people from out of state come in and buy up houses that were single-family houses and divide them up to 6 units, 8 units, and then they disappear. And so it's a challenge. But we have to be very balanced and very thoughtful about how we use this landmass. That's why home rule is so important to me, because we clearly, when you see all the signs out there, you realize people want to have a say in what comes on into their landmass here and how this city will grow and shape. We don't have any elbow room, right? We've got Town of Little Falls, Manheim, everybody right around us. They have land. We do not.
So where's the project? How far along is the project in terms of what they need to do with the zoning board and the planning committee?
On the Reed Street project, I haven't heard anything from them in a few weeks. The last thing we did was we sent it to their application to the Oneida and Herkimer County Planning Board. They reviewed it. Their decision was, I'm trying to think of the terminology that they used. It was pretty much a neutral decision, that there wasn't enough information to make a final decision. So that was, where it stands right now. So it didn't get voted up or down. It was just neutral. And so going forward, we're allowed to go forward with it. And so the next thing is to schedule a planning meeting with the planning board. And that's where we're waiting right now. We're trying to schedule that meeting. But we haven't heard anything back in 3 weeks. So I don't know where that stands right now. We're moving forward with the Rockton Plaza, and that particular project has gone a little bit further with site review initial, and they're coming back to resubmit. So that's moving a little quicker.
Okay, good. Well, I want to thank you again for doing this. I think it's very important that people in Little Falls understand what's happening in the city, particularly with government. That was one of my goals in doing these podcasts, was to keep people informed. So this was good. And I wish you luck, because it's an uphill.
You say that and smile.
Well, yeah, I don't know that I'd want to be in your shoes, but.
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces right now. And every time we fix something, it makes it a little bit easier, right? And a new procedure, whatever happens to be. So it's, you just keep on battling it every single day, and you go home and you feel like, okay, I'm totally exhausted. I can't do another thing. Don't want to think. And then you just get some rest and go back the next day and do it again. It is my pleasure, really. And I take the job very seriously, and I'm appreciative of the support that I've been given, and I have no intention in letting anyone down.
Good. And I would just like to make a final comment. I'd like to encourage everyone who's watching this to go on the Little Falls website and look at some of these reports, so you have a understanding of where the city stands and why we had this conversation today. It's really important to the future of our city. So thank you for watching. See you next time.